Hi there BookTube, it's Eleanor here. And me and my friend Tracy have decided that for the month of October, we're going to be doing a bit of a sort of readathon amongst ourselves. It's going to be reading sort of spooky books, all the scary, spooky, thrillery books that are on our shelves, true crime, all that sort of thing. But rather than setting ourselves prompts to start with, we're going to be doing it as we go along, because what has transpired for me is that I don't like to set a big TBR. I always go off the book that I'm going to pick, and it just doesn't work. So what we've decided to do is we've both come up with a list of prompts. We don't know each other's prompts that sort of fit this sort of spooky idea. And then every time we finish a book, we'll message the other one and they will send us our new prompt. And hopefully that will just keep the excitement going for the month. So it's the 1st of October and I have just received my first prompt from Tracy, which is a nice one. She started me off nice, or I think she thought it was nice, but actually it was quite hard to find a book. But she has said, read a book with orange on the cover. So I'm going to go for this one. It may feel a bit tentative in terms of the orange, but it has got the orange here. And I sort of think that, I know it's probably classed as yellow, but it's a bit orangey yellow on the actual book. But I'm definitely thinking this is kind of like orange in parts. And I just fancy this one right now, and it works for the prompt. And that's the Brightlands by John Fram. So this is meant to be quite twisty and turny, and the whole premise is that this sort of star quarterback in this town that holds like football above everything else disappears. It's in Texas, I believe, and this boy's brother comes back to town to help search for him, and he has left the town previously because he obviously wasn't treated very nicely. He's gay, so he's found a place for himself where he's moved to, and moved away from sort of a toxic environment, but he's come back to look for his brother. And as he starts to investigate, I think it unravels things that perhaps the high school students know more than they're letting on, and there's other people that have disappeared. And I just think it sounds really good. Quite a lot of twists and turns. I'm in the mood for a thriller. Don't want to go straight into the really scary ones because I'm a wuss. So this is the one that I pick. So I'll come back and let you know how I get on with this and what I think of it. And then we can move on and find out what our next prompt is. Okay, so it's quite early in the morning, so I've got no makeup on, but I thought I would check in. I decided not to read Brightlands in the end. I read the first 50 pages and I just really wasn't enjoying it, so I have DNF'd that, unfortunately. But I picked up a different book with orange on the cover, and I went for Harrow Lake by Kat Ellis. I've had this for quite a few years and I didn't get around to reading it last spooky season, and I thought I would be brave and do it now. And I'm really pleased I did, although it was quite scary. It was quite scary, and I think this is aimed maybe at a younger audience. Oh, they must be braver than me. This is a really good book. It starts with a interview that's going on with a famous horror film director and a girl from this Scream magazine. And then, let me take my headphones out, I've been listening to it on audiobook, and it starts off with that, and then we go into this story about this young girl who something's happened to her father, who is this famous filmmaker, and so she ends up having to go live with her grandmother, who she's never really met, in this small town of Harrow Lake, which is where her father met her mother, filming this sort of horror film. And her mother ended up being the main part, and then they got married. And there's sort of quite a lot of mystery and sort of superstition and sort of horror behind this town. There's people think that there's this monster called Mr. Jitters that will eat people, and there's this whole sort of backstory behind that. And people, when their teeth fall out, they don't bury their dead, and when their teeth fall out they tie them onto this tree so that they can't go underground. And there's all sorts of things, and there's like an annual sort of fair in and this movie really made this town like a popular tourist attraction. And there's all sorts going on with different characters that you meet, and we're following this girl as she sort of goes into some sort of, excuse me, as she goes into sort of a madness, and her mind starts to unravel some things that she's subconsciously suppressed over the years. And I just thought that this story had a really good pace. It was really fast paced. I read it in a day. It had a really good sense of eeriness and a really great way of building up the suspense. And I can certainly say from now, we're talking from someone that doesn't watch horror films and is scared at everything. The spook factor in this is definitely a good 4, solid 4. Towards the end, when we started to unravel a bit more, I managed to breathe again. But it definitely wasn't one that I wanted to read at night time. I wanted to read a book last night, couldn't pick this one up. I just thought, no, can't do it. So I finished it off this morning. So I'm going to give this one a solid 4 stars. I'm really pleased I picked it up. It has my orange on the cover, so I fulfilled that prompt. Now, I was chatting with Tracy last night because we watched our weekly episode of Drag Race, and I know that I asked her to send me my next prompt, but I haven't looked at it. So I'm going to go in now to the chat that we have. Okay, so my second spooky prompt is to read a book with a spooky animal on the cover, like a black cat or a familiar. Ooh. Let me have a look and I'll come back and tell you what I pick. Okay, I've just looked at the books that I've sort of got out for this month, and there's nothing at all with a black cat or a familiar on it. So I'm going to have to delve deeper onto my shelves and see if I've got something somewhere. So I will let you know when I find something. Okay, so my second prompt from Tracy was to pick a book with a cat, black cat, or a familiar on the front. That was really tricky, and it got to the point where I was thinking I might have to go and like get one from the library, but I'm trying desperately to use books off my shelf for this. And so I asked Tracy if bats were okay, and she said yes because of the whole vampire thing. So that's the dog with his squeaky toy. Ron, quiet. He probably won't listen. So I picked up Mina and the Undead by Amy McCraw off my shelf. This was actually a recommendation from Tracy, who hasn't read it yet, but she was recommended it via someone's video, so I thought it would be an interesting one to pick up too. And I ended up really enjoying this. Our main character Mina arrives in New Orleans. Her sister Libby has been living there for a while at university. They're from England, and she's upset that her sister left her because their dad, I think, is dead. Their mum up and left them a year previous and left them with their aunt, and then Libby up and left Mina to go to university miles away. So there is a little bit of animosity between the two, especially Mina. She's feeling a little bit like she's been deserted. But she's gone to New Orleans for the summer to visit her sister, and her sister works at like a horror house. So rather than like a haunted house, each room you go into with like a tour guide is set up like a scene from a horror film, and there's sort of interactive actors, and you're led through all these different horror films. And it's really exciting, and Mina wants to get a job there for the summer. She meets Libby's housemates, and then there is a murder, and this is sort of unravelling what's going on. There's implications towards her sister. She has to try and uncover who's doing this, why are they doing this, is there some supernatural elements at play here, are there vampires, and it was just a real fun ride. I couldn't put it down. I read it really quickly in a day, and it was really good fun. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars, and I'm really pleased I picked it up. Now, Tracy did last night text me the next prompt, which was so tricky, so thanks Tracy. It was to pick up a book set in a cold climate. Now, if you're into those sort of police procedural books that are maybe from Norway or Sweden, they're often set in these cold climates, but I'm not, and I just couldn't find anything that I had on my TBR pile. So what I ended up picking up is actually a sort of middle grade fantasy, because I think that sort of fits into this idea. So the next book I'm going to read is Winter House by Ben Gutterson. It's one I've wanted to read for quite a while. I've had it on my shelf for ages, and I think it's going to be quite a quick read. It's about an orphan. It says Elizabeth Summers and her Aunt Purdy and Uncle Burlap ship her off to the ominous Winter House Hotel, and it's how she discovers all of these different charms. It's got a large library, there's magical books of puzzles and mysteries, and I think, you know, although it's not spooky, there is a mystery sort of aspect to it, and I think this is the best sort of connection to that prompt that I can find. So I'm going to read this one, so I'll come back and let you know how I get on. Okay, so as per usual, I come to you in my big hoodie and my pyjamas with no makeup, because I always end up finishing a book in the evening and then I don't want to wait till the next day to talk about it. So, Winter House by Ben Gutterson. This was my prompt. Tracy asked me to pick a prompt with a wintry theme, and this is the one I went for in the end because I just didn't have anything else. And I'm so pleased I finally picked this up. For some reason I put it off, and then I was like, oh, I'll read it with Matilda, and then I wasn't sure, and then I just decided to pick it up, and it was really good. And it's got that sort of Christmassy feel as well, so it would be a great book to read around Christmas with children. It's about our main character Elizabeth, and she lives with her aunt and uncle who don't like her, she doesn't like them, and at the very beginning of the book you don't even meet the aunt and uncle. She finds a letter on her front door from them saying, we've packed a few clothes in a rucksack, you're going to spend Christmas at this hotel called Winter House, this is the train you get, this is the bus you get, it will take you forever to get there, we're going off on holiday, bye bye, have fun. So off she goes, and she arrives at Winter House, and it's this sort of magical place with a lovely room and a really old sort of grandfatherly owner, and lots of things going on. There's people doing puzzles in the like physical puzzles in the sort of atrium of the hotel. There's talks and music. There's lots of skiing and sweets and treats and lovely things going on. And she meets another boy that's also there without parents, who has come a few years running. His parents send him off while they go off on holidays. So all very unrealistic. Can you imagine this happening in real life? There'd be social services and all sorts coming in. So there's sort of this mystery that starts to unravel, and we follow her as she's sort of trying to unravel this mystery of Winter House. And there's a book she finds in the library, and there's lots of puzzling and codes, and her and this boy Freddie are really into anagrams and solving puzzles and going on scavenging hunts, and it's just a real nice low level of jeopardy, thrillery, mystery type book. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I gave it a strong 4 stars. I really wanted to pick it up all the time. I wanted to get it finished. And so I have now just ordered myself book 2 and 3 in this series, because I definitely think that it is a series that I want to be continuing on with. So I'm really pleased I read this. Now, Tracy's given me a prompt, and it's to read a book with a stripy spine. Now, I think it was stripy spine rather than cover. Let's just check. Oh, she's put and or cover. So I've now got to go and try and find a book with a stripy spine or cover that's spooky. This could be an issue. Okay, so I've read 2 books since I last checked in, but Tracy is fastly becoming the queen of difficult prompts. So the next prompt that she sent me was to read a book with a stripy spine or cover. So bear in mind here that I'm not just reading any book off my shelf. It's got to be sort of a thriller or horror or, you know, something with monsters or something in. So this was quite a challenge. However, I rose to that challenge and I picked up this one. I don't know if you can see. Are we going to focus? No? Typical. There you go. You can see the stripes on there now. This is my favourite thing is Monsters. It's by Emil Ferris. I've had this on my shelf for ages. It's a graphic novel. It's beautiful artwork. I mean, so brilliantly drawn. And it's one I've had for a long time and just not, well, actually that's just a lie. I have picked it up, but I've picked it up, I've put it down, and then, you know, I haven't really sat down and come back to it. So this was the prime opportunity to finally kick this one off my shelf. And unfortunately, it was a bit as I suspected. It was okay. I mean, the artwork, if you were just going on the artwork, I would give this 5 stars. It's beautiful artwork. I just found the story, it just wasn't for me. I found it a bit long. I think the artwork overtook the story, and sometimes I think she wanted to draw certain things, and so we ended up with a lot of extra story filling in there, in my opinion anyway. It's about a young girl who's living in this block of flats, and she lives with her much older brother, you know, 20 odd years older, and her mum. And there is another lady that lives in the building. There's a few other people that live in the building, and one of the ladies that lived in the building is murdered, and so she sort of puts her crime hat on and she's trying to work out what's happened to this woman, and we're learning a bit about this woman's life. So the lady upstairs who's been murdered lived in Nazi Germany, and so she suffers from trauma from that, and so we're learning a bit about that. We're learning a bit about her brother, who is an interesting character, and how her life is, and how she fits in her social sort of group, and how her interests in the sort of dark and horror film and this sort of macabre has created an isolation for her with other children at school, other girls who don't really understand, and the one girl who sort of did understand and was her best friend, who has been forced to distance herself by her mother, who doesn't like the idea of her daughter you know, feeling this way about, you know, certain types of films and stuff. So it was, you know, in some ways it was good, in other ways it just felt a bit draggy, so I ended up giving this one 3 stars. Then Tracy gave me, I can't remember what the prompt was, but I couldn't do it, I just couldn't find it on my shelf, and I don't want to go out and buy stuff. So she gave me a new prompt, which was a middle grade, and I had one middle grade, but I'd already read it. No. Did I have one middle grade and already read it? No, I didn't. What was it? Was it a middle grade read? I think it was a middle grade read. And so I decided to pick up this one, which was Monster Hunting for Beginners by Ian Mark. This is one I'd actually picked up from Matilda, and thought it was one we would enjoy reading together. And I just thought, well, why don't I read it first, and if it's any good, she can read it with my husband. It's got loads of pictures throughout, and she's really still into having, you know, a fair amount of pictures in her books. She doesn't like it if it's just text. Even if we're reading it to her, she likes something where she can look at pictures along the way, which is absolutely fine. And this one seemed to fit the bill. This was such a fun read. It was really fun. It was about our main character whose mum has disappeared, presumed dead, and dad suddenly disappears one day, and then he becomes this monster hunter and goes on these adventures. The prose in this is got that sort of entertaining, funny feel to it that I think a lot of middle grade readers will really enjoy, the humour element to this. It's said in that way as if it's talking to the reader, which I really enjoy, and it's quite tongue-in-cheek and quite funny. So I really enjoyed this one. It was an easy read, it was easy to sort of get through, and I gave this one 3 stars as well. Then Tracy asked me to read a book with a vampire on, which I didn't have because I've already read one with a vampire in. And so she then picked a book where most of the cover is black. And I was like, I'm not gonna be able to do this one either. And then I looked, and I did have one which I feel it's got enough black on to fulfill that prompt, and it's this one. And it's called It's Behind You, and it's by Catherine Foxfield. It says that she is the author of Good Girls Die First. I haven't read that one. I'm not really a big horror reader or scary book reader, so this will be one to be reading during the daylight hours for me. But the idea I think behind it is that these contestants take part in this TV show where they have to go and be scared, and each series is set in a different place that's meant to be haunted or scary, and the contestants go in, and I think a lot of the time the TV crew amp up the sort of scariness and try and scare them in order for good TV, and whoever is left after this one night in this place, they split £10,000. So if you're the last one and the only one in there, you get the full £10,000, and if there's a few of you, share it or however. And so we're following at the moment, and I don't know if it's going to be split points of view, but at the moment we're following this girl Lex, who doesn't seem to be particularly scared, is only going in this for the money, seems quite sort of resistant to bothering about any sort of you know, horror stuff. She's just not interested. She thinks she can explain everything away. She's totally, you know, just in it for the money, and thinks she can because she doesn't believe in any of this mumbo jumbo in sort of her opinion. And then things have sort of slowly started to happen before she's even got in. I've just started this one. I've read a couple of chapters and the eeriness is already starting to go in. And this particular series of the show is being filmed in this place where there's this big cave system where lots of people have died, but they think that there's this woman called, what's she called, the Puckered Maiden, who's a woman that I think she either was jilted at the altar or cheated on or something, and then she sort of killed her fiance and ate his heart or something, and she's meant to like haunt these caves and kill people, and she doesn't believe any of this, but I'm sure there's going to be something going on. So yeah, I'm looking forward to doing this one. And then as part of our sort of our reading for the month, me and Tracy decided that tonight we're going to watch a scary film together. Now, there is a limit to where I'm prepared to go with scary films, and so the perfect one we felt is this new film out called Freaky, which is a play on Freaky Friday, which if you're as old as the hills as me, you'll remember all of the versions of it, but is about where two people switch bodies, so your sort of essence and your personality and everything goes into someone else's body and they come into yours via some sort of magical thing. And this one, the idea is that Vince Vaughn's in it, and he is a serial killer, and I think people know what he looks like, and he's been sort of terrorizing this town and killing people. And then this cheerleader, and I think she gets they get swapped bodies, so this, you know, manic serial killer is now in the body of a cheerleader, which, you know, can cause all sorts of mayhem. And I think it's quite tongue-in-cheek. It might be quite bloody and gory, which I'm okay with. It's the scary bits I don't like. So I think if it's got that tongue-in-cheek humour and it's sort of a play on a lot of the old horror films, and there is it's gory rather than too scary, I think I'll be all right. So fingers crossed. So we're going to watch that tonight, and I'll let you know how I feel about it next time I speak to you, and I'll let you know how I get on with this one. Okay, bye for now. Okay, so I just finished It's Behind You by Catherine Foxfield, and I'm so pleased I read this one. It's about the limit of my scaredy capabilities, but it was really good. It's centred around this reality TV show that's taking place. It's like the 4th season that's being filmed, and they film every season in a different sort of scary place. And the idea is you have to stay in there overnight. And if you manage to stay overnight, you get £10,000, and if 2 of you manage to stay, you split it, so it's 5,000, and there's 5 of you that go in. And this one, there is a lot more that goes on behind each of the different characters, and they're going into this caves where there's this legend of this Puckered Maiden, which is meant to have been this jilted bride who sort of killed her ex-fiance and taken his heart out. It's all this sort of backstory, and our main character Lex doesn't sort of believe in any of that. She's totally in it for the money, and she's quite snarky and just a really great character. And then slowly as it goes on, there's sort of creepy bits, there's bits that make you jump, then slowly you start to unravel everyone's backstories and, you know, why they're there. And at the beginning of some chapters, there are these sort of transcripts of the original interviews of how the producer Jackie got them to go on the show, and how that came about, which starts to sort of help you unravel their backstories. I thought it was written really well. I thought it was really atmospheric. I thought it was really evocative. I could really picture in my head this sort of place that over the years there's been sort of attempts to turn into some sort of creepy, weird theme park attraction, which didn't sort of quite go to plan and never got finished. So everything's a bit like half done and a bit creepy and worry, and there's weird animatronics that haven't quite been finished. And yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I really liked how it ended. I liked how it unravelled. So a strong 4 stars. So I've just asked Tracy for my next prompt, and I'll come back and let you know what it is and what book I decide to pick. Okay, so we're back. It's been a few days, I think, maybe longer than that, and today is the day before Matilda's birthday. We've just had her birthday party sleepover, which was tiring. There's a lot of girls running around, but it was good fun. She had a really nice time. So the last book that I was told to pick was a book with a black main character or author. So I have gone for both, and I have picked The Poison Heart by Kaylin Bayram, which is the same author who wrote Cinderella is Dead, which I really enjoyed actually. I gave it 4 stars. So I was really intrigued by this one. It is, well, the premise is that you've got a girl who she lives with. She's got 2 mums, which I like that representation. I thought that was really good. She knows that something different about her. She can control plants. She knows there's something to do with plants. She can make plants grow, and considering her family owns a florist, that can be really helpful at times if they've run out of things. And she has only started recently to discover that she has immunity to those sort of plants that are really lethal to you. And she finds out that she's come into this inheritance. It's something that they really need, that her birth family, it's been gifted to her from her birth family, this big estate. And her mums decide that they're going to go and stay there for the summer and check it out. And then things start to sort of move and progress from there. I really loved the direction this went in. I felt like it based its sort of magical roots in mythology, which I really appreciated, and one that I wasn't so, you know, it's not one that maybe we all know and know inside out, which I thought was really good because it educated me, and I felt like I wanted to then go off and read the original myth that this book has sort of got elements in. I think when I went into it, I thought it was a standalone, and I think I would have liked it to have been a standalone. However, that's not the case, and so I definitely will read the next one, I think, to find out what happens. I just felt like the first 70% of the book was really slow, and then the last 25% was so jam-packed with information and twists and turns and adventure that I just felt tired, and I'd wished that there had been a better pacing to the story. I felt like it wasn't very well paced, and you know, there were times where I was like, oh, am I enjoying this? Do I want to carry on? I'm pleased I did, because I liked the way it started to unravel as it got going a bit, but I did feel like at the beginning it was sort of a little bit laboured, and we were a bit slow to get to the sort of part of the story where everything starts to sort of ramp up a bit. And I know that often that's the point, you've got this build up, but I just found myself losing interest more than feeling like I needed to read on. So that was a shame. I did like it, and I gave it 3 stars. And then my next prompt from Tracy is to read a book by a debut author, and a book written by a debut author. I think that's what it was. So I decided to pick this one up, called Dark and Shallow Lies by Ginny Myers Sane. Correct me if I'm wrong, but, well, it'll be too late when you see this, so you can't, well, you can correct me, but I can't change anything now because this is the one I'm reading. But this is Ginny's debut book, and it's not 100% clear what it's about, but I picked it up because it sounded interesting. It's about a missing girl. It's in this town where everyone's got some sort of psychic power. I think it's a bit of a thriller. It's a YA. It's about a 17-year-old called Gray. She returns to La Cachette in Louisiana, a small town where she grew up every summer, but this time is different. Gray's best friend, Alora, has been missing for months. When Gray discovers a connection between Alora's disappearance and a pair of grisly murders 13 years earlier, she realises she can't trust anyone. Not her grandmother, nor her childhood love, and least of all the stormy-eyed boy who emerges from the bayou. Magic and secrets fester beneath the surface of La Cachette, and its dark and shallow lies are about to blow the town apart. Yeah, so I just fancied something a bit different, something less scary but more thriller-esque, and this is her debut book, so I've picked this one up, and I will come back to you and let you know how I get on with this one. Okay, so I'm going to try and squeeze in the next 2 books because I've read 2 books since I last spoke to you. So the one I picked for a debut, author's debut book was Dark and Shallow Lies by Ginny Myers Sane. I wasn't quite sure what I was going into here, but I did know that it was set in sort of a rural town off the Mississippi in America, and that there is a group of children who are called the Summer Children, and they all come back together during the summer, whether their parents, one parent lives there and another parent lives there somewhere else, and they just come back from the summer, or various other reasons. And there was these children all born on the same sort of summer, which is why they're called the summer children. And that was about it. I knew that one of our main character who we're reading from, her best friend had disappeared and she wasn't sure who to trust. And this really ended up being quite atmospheric, something I really enjoyed. The setting is in the bayou. It's in this tiny little town where everyone has slight sort of psychic powers to some degree or another. So maybe they can converse with the dead. Maybe they can feel if someone's hiding something. Maybe they can control weather. Maybe they're drawn to various different things. And so there's this sort of slight supernatural element to it. But the best friend has disappeared, Alora's disappeared, and our main character, Gray, doesn't know where she is. No one knows what's happened to her, they just know she's disappeared, and she's trying to discover what's happened. They had an argument the summer before, she's come back now, and this, you know, she just feels like she hasn't been able to make peace. And there's quite a lot of twists and turns. The setting is great. We slowly start to unravel who these people are. We find out more about them. There's obviously loads of secrets in this sort of close-knit town. And it sort of starts to culminate in this hurricane that is coming and going to hit the town. So as the tension builds in the storyline and we start to unravel the plot, the tension also builds because of this hurricane. And it was just really good. I really enjoyed it. So I gave this a solid 4 stars, and I'm going to be passing this one on to Tracy because she loves anything set in this sort of area. And then she gave me a prompt of reading a book that is set in another country other than the UK or the USA. So for this I went for The Promised Neverland Volume 1. This is a manga that I've been meaning to read for ages and just hadn't picked it up. We're never told where this is set, but it's written by some Japanese authors. It's set, I think, somewhere other than Earth, maybe. I don't know. It's set in a world that isn't specifically mentioned, but I'm going with this one for that. And I was pleasantly surprised. I thought I was going to find it like a lot of manga. I'm very picky on the manga that I read because often I find that the females in it are very overly sexualized in the way that they're drawn, and then often the sort of sense of humor and the storyline sometimes misses its mark for me. It just doesn't gel for me, but I really enjoyed this. It's set in this orphanage. There's a group of orphans and we're following the 3 eldest who are 11. The orphans, if they reach 12, are sent away, we're not sure where, but to sort of homes, and younger ones get adopted. And as the book progresses, we realise that perhaps everything isn't as sweet and lovely as it seems on the surface. These 3 main characters may uncover something, and then it is looking at how to sort of save themselves, really. I'm definitely going to pick up the others, but probably from the library, so I'm looking forward to that. And Tracy has now tasked me with reading a book with ghosts or haunted houses in. I struggled a bit with that one, but I'm going for this one. It's the first in this series. It's Lockwood & Co. The Screaming Staircase by Jonathan Stroud. I picked this because it mentioned ghosts on the back. It said the dead are back to haunt the living. Evil spirits crowd the streets after dark. I have to give it sole credit for picking this one up finally because of Leanne from Literary Diversion's book pushing. She loves this series, she talks about it a lot. I've ummed and ahed, and recently I'd bought this book, and it must be kismet and fate because it fits with this prompt. And yeah, I'm hoping that I'm going to enjoy it. It sounds like it's an interesting read and a bit more light-hearted maybe. She loves it, so I'm hoping I will too. I'm hoping it's going to be quite fast paced, and if I like it, this could be a new series that I could be moving on with. The dog is barking. He's either seen a cat or he needs a poo, so I should probably go and check on him. So I'll get back to you when I've read this. Okay, so I'm back for a brief check-in. I ended up DNFing this one. It just wasn't for me. It reminded me a bit of Rick Riordan's writing, so if that's something that you do like, then maybe this will be something for you, but it just doesn't work for me. I find it a bit too forced, the humour, so I'm gutted, but I had to DNF that one. So I asked Tracy for another prompt. So the prompt was a 2021 release, and I'd picked this up from the library a few weeks ago and I was desperate to read it. It's True Crime Story by Joseph Knox, and I really loved this. It was so close to a 5 stars, but it just didn't quite get there, but it was a really strong 4-star read. This is written all as if it was various different people talking, so the whole way through it's like transcripts of interviews, and the premise of the story is a Manchester University student has gone missing, and this is years later, and a lady wants to write a book about the story. It's never been discovered what happened to this girl, and so she's going back, looking over all the evidence, talking and interviewing all the different parties that were involved and in this girl's life, and she's sending copies of this and her ideas to her friend who's also a writer called Joseph Knox. And at the very start of this book, I thought, oh, maybe this is a real life, maybe this is based on true, you know, real life. And I had to Google to check it wasn't non-fiction, which it wasn't, but it was just very cleverly done. And I listened to this on audio, which is done by a complete cast. The only downside is they don't tell you who is speaking next. So because there's different people for different characters, you're sort of meant to get used to their voices and sort of learn that. But I found it too difficult to just listen, so I did follow along in the book at the same time. It's really clever how it twists and turns, how it slowly unfolds the plot. It's really addictive. I read this in a day and it's over 400 pages. I just couldn't stop listening to it. I wanted to know what was happening. I liked the ending. I liked how it worked out. It wasn't quite as neatly tied up as I would have liked, but I really did enjoy it. So I would definitely recommend this if you haven't heard of it before. True crime story by Joseph Knox. And then I've asked Tracy to give me the last 3 prompts, potential prompts, if I manage to read 3 more books, because we're actually going away for a weekend, and so I wanted to be able to take the books with me. So she asked me to pick a thriller, and I picked The Last Girl by Goldie Moldavsky. She said to pick a 5-star prediction, and I'm going to go for They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. And she asked me to pick an award winner, and so I've picked a book by award-winning author Zoraida Cordova, The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina. So I won't tell you anything about those 3, but they're the next 3 I'm going to read, and I'll come back when I've finished them and let you know my thoughts and a bit more about what they are. Okay, so excuse the hair, I've just taken the dog for a walk. The wrap up to this is going to be a bit lackluster because I meant to read this one and I've got over halfway, but I'm just not enjoying it. I'm finding it hard, and maybe it's because I've been listening to it on audiobook. Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of characters in this. There's quite a lot of flitting back and forth in time, and I don't know whether maybe it doesn't lend itself so well to audio, but I was listening to it on our journey to and from my mother-in-law's going to visit, and maybe this would have fared better had I been reading it like physical copy, but for now it's going to be a DNF. And then I did have another book, and I have got 2 days until the end of the month. However, I'm going to be going really hardcore for non-fiction November, and if you haven't seen my TBR, that's up now. And also I just hauled a load of graphic novels recently, and I've got a few more since then, and so I really want to spend the next 2 or 3 days reading as many graphic novels as I can and talking about them in a video for you. So I'm going to wrap up here and say this is all the books that I read in October, spooky, for our little challenge. We're going to do it again for December because we loved it so much. It was just so much fun doing like a Christmas a spooky book thing where we read a book and then got a prompt that we're going to do the same but Christmas themed. And oh, shall I show you something exciting just to round it off? I know it's a bit early, but I bought myself an advent calendar. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I really love escape room games, and Exit have bought out an advent calendar this year, and I can't wait. It's like about a pre-Christmas ski trip that hasn't gone as planned, and every day you get different riddles and things to sort of try and solve it by the end of December, so I can't wait. So if you're into that sort of thing, maybe you want to get one of these too, you might enjoy it. And yeah, that was just a random thing to put in the end, but I look forward to speaking to you soon. I hope you've enjoyed this, maybe found some new books to try yourselves, and yeah, I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now, BookTube.